guys, we left off at part 2 of Winterhouse. Christmas approaches and the nights are dark. And the word ladder for this one is dark, lark, lack, lock, look, book. And chapter 16 is called An Unbreakable Code. And the word ladder is code, node, knows, lose, loss, logs. Elizabeth woke early, her sleep disturbed by another nightmare, this one almost identical to the one she'd had on the bus. Once again, she'd been in an enormous library and seemed hemmed in by rows of bookcases. After she had raced a long distance to try to escape from the darkness and a strange voice that kept calling her, her path was blocked by an old woman who seemed to fix her in place with piercing eyes. Just as had happened before, Elizabeth woke right when the woman was about to put a hand on her. She sat upright and was disoriented for a moment as she tried to recall where she was. When she slowly realized she had only been dreaming and was actually safe in her bed at Winterhouse, she lay back down heavily and sighed. The dream had frightened her, and it took several minutes and a glass of warm water from the bathroom sink to settle her mind. After a bit of tossing and turning, she realized she wasn't going to get back to sleep. So Elizabeth dressed, brushed her hair and teeth, and then, to fully put her thoughts at ease, she began reading a guide for children, including chapters on how to throw your voice and how to disguise yourself with unique costumes. She thumbed through the book and found one near the end entitled How to Write Unbreakable Codes by Using the Cipher. It began like this. Dear reader, this is the single most important chapter in the entire book because codes and secret messages are very dear to my heart. If you have found this book, study this chapter very carefully. Elizabeth felt a chill go through her. She kept reading. It is one of the greatest secret code methods ever invented. If you learn it, you can write codes that are next to impossible to break, and so you can write messages to your friends that no one else will be able to read. All you need is a key word that you and your friend both know, but make sure you don't forget the key word. Beyond that, if you can follow the instructions in this chapter, you will be well on your way to writing coded sentences that will look like gobbledygook to other people, but will conceal your deepest secrets in safety. She read the chapter carefully, which even had an alphabet grid on one page and an example to work through. The grid, as Riley S. Granger called it, looked like this. A lot of letters. The example in the book was the sentence, look at the beautiful picture. While the key word was hotel, Riley S. Granger explained that by using the key word, a person could transform look at the beautiful picture into the unbreakable code sentence of Sko la hai mahong ka mi ttjhnvp. The way it was worked was by laying your keyword over the sentence you want to turn into a code and then using it to help you along. That is, you would match the H in hotel with the L in look, and where they intersected in the grid, you found the letter S. Working through the entire sentence gave you this. That's incredible, Elizabeth thought. No one could break that. As she sat staring at the square in the example, a thought came to her with as much shock as she'd felt when Norbridge had transformed the puppets into birds the night before. This code was connected to the painting of Nestor Falls. It's too much of a coincidence, Elizabeth thought. The keyword is hotel, and the sentence itself is look at the beautiful picture. Somehow, this strange book seemed to be steering her toward a solution to Nestor's message, and she couldn't wait to find Freddie at breakfast just to tell him. All we need to figure out is the key word, she thought. She was so excited that she could hardly sit still, but because it was too early to head to Winter Hall, she created a message for Freddie that she would share with him after she explained the cipher at breakfast. The key word she chose was log, and the coded sentence was this. Ok easy CLBZ ek mza GCTASTBM. As she was closing the book, something caught her eye. In the middle of the page where the author's name and the year 1897 were written, she saw a very large and ornate letter T in sparkly silver print. I wonder how I missed that, Elizabeth thought. She stared at the letter, glanced at a few of the other pages to see if she could find anything similar, and then, feeling slightly unsettled, set the book down, wondering what the letter might mean. Finally, she opened her notebook and began to make a new entry. Strange things about Winterhouse. When the bell for breakfast tolled, Elizabeth took a guide for children with her and rushed downstairs. As Elizabeth entered Winter Hall, she examined the family tree for a moment and studied the inscription for Norbridge's sister Gracella. Amazingly, her last name had become Winters through marriage. The note beneath her name simply said, "An enigma." Elizabeth waved to Jackson by the way of checking in when she entered the enormous hall, and then made a beeline for Freddie, who was sitting in the same spot where they'd shared 3 meals now. "You'll never believe what's happened since I saw you last night," she said as she plopped down in an empty seat beside him and set a guide for children on the table. "You read 5 books?" he said. "Seriously." She adjusted her glasses with both hands and tried to settle her thoughts. She hardly knew where to begin. "Okay, first off, you see this book?" Freddie eyed a guide for children warily, as though there was some trick in store. Yeah," he said slowly. "It's sitting right there where you put it down." Elizabeth pressed on. "I found it yesterday in the reference room of the library. I wasn't supposed to take it, but it was way up on a shelf where no one has probably even seen it since, I don't know, since Norbridge was our age, but I took it anyway because it looked so interesting and I wanted to read it. It's a really strange book and it has something in it that I think is connected to Nestor's code." "Slow down," Freddie said. "You stole a book?" "That's not what I'm getting at. But before I tell you more about this book, there's something else important. I went down to the library last night again really late, and Norbridge and Leona were in there looking around." For the first time that morning, Freddie looked serious, and he listened intently as their breakfast plates arrived and Elizabeth recounted the conversation she'd overheard the night before. Freddie had an anxious expression on his face when she finished. "I don't think you should have spied on them," he said. "But all of that does sound suspicious. Still, there's got to be some explanation other than Norbridge being a thief." "There is definitely something strange about Marcus Q. Himes and his wife," Elizabeth said. "But I think we should hold off on telling Norbridge what he said for now. I just don't know what's going on, and I just don't know who to believe." "But if we think it over," Freddie said as he ate his eggs, "maybe Norbridge and Leona are just doing some kind of review of the books in the library. Maybe they're trying to see if anyone is stealing stuff. I don't know. I just can't believe that he'd be involved in anything shady." "But the way he acted and the things he said." "It's probably nothing. It could just be regular old hotel stuff that we don't know about, like, I don't know, security stuff or something that Norbridge needs to take care of." "Maybe you're just letting your imagination run wild." "But you said you saw him a few nights ago too, coming back from the library." Elizabeth felt a little frustrated that Freddie wasn't seeing things her way. "And you said that you also thought it was kind of funny." Freddie frowned and thought it over for a moment, while Elizabeth just stared at him. "Maybe something is going on," he said. "Still, this is Norbridge that we're talking about. We don't have to tell him about what the man told you, but I don't think he's stealing books or anything like that." Elizabeth didn't like to hear this and was about to tell Freddie he might be wrong, but then she stopped herself and thought better about being too hasty. "Maybe you're right," she said. She drummed her fingers on the Granger book. "Okay, but get this," she said. "Different subject. In this book, there's a chapter about this code." She couldn't remember the name, and she was reaching for the book. "The Vignere cipher?" Freddie said casually. Elizabeth stopped fumbling with the book. "You've heard of it?" "Sure, it's a famous code. They used it in the Civil War." Freddie stopped chewing his muffin. He looked as though he'd figured out the answer to a difficult question. "Hey, does this connect to the message we saw in the painting yesterday?" "Exactly," Elizabeth said. "Look at this." And after she showed him the chapter in the book with the example sentence and the key word, he was as convinced as she was that there was a connection and that the coded words in Nestor's painting could be solved by using the cipher. But how can we figure out the key word? Freddie said. Elizabeth ran a finger over the alphabet grid in the book. That's the mystery, and I think we should try to figure it out. It's like in the Westing game or something. Freddie spooned up some oatmeal and remained silent. What are you thinking about? Elizabeth asked. She had barely touched her food. One thing I just don't understand, Freddie said, is why you took that book. I guess what I mean is, if I saw a sign that said not to take a book from the library, I'd just leave it there. I probably should have put it back, but it just looks so interesting, and it didn't seem like a big deal to borrow it when I know that I will return it. Maybe Freddie thought she had gone overboard with everything. I mean, spying on Norbridge, taking the book from the library, getting caught up in what Marcus Q. Himes had told her. A flicker of concern went through her that perhaps Freddie was wondering if she was actually the type of person that he could trust. Oh, hey, look at this, she said, wanting to move on to a new subject. From her pocket, she took out the piece of paper on which she'd written her coded message. For you, the key word is log. He picked up the book, examined the table of contents, turned to the Vignere Square, and began scanning the rows and columns. Within 2 minutes, he said, You wrote, do you want to go swimming? You got it, Elizabeth said. She looked at him. Well, do you? He said nothing, but he took out a pen from his pocket and wrote swim on her paper. What are you doing? She said. Just watch, he said. He handed her the paper and the pen. If you're kind of on the skinny side, you are. Elizabeth gave him a perplexed look. But then it all made sense to her, and beneath swim, she wrote slim. Freddie gave her a thumbs up. And if you tripped on a banana peel, you, she wrote, slid. Freddie gave her 2 thumbs up. And if you were outside in the snow at the top of a hill, you would need a sled, Elizabeth said. Okay, got it. I want to go swimming. You want to go sledding. Coin flip time. Hey, now that I think about it, Freddie said, there was something interesting I noticed in that book. He picked it up and began thumbing through it. Here's a good one. How to organize a scavenger hunt. He looked up at her with excitement. We should do this. Yeah? Elizabeth said. You want to try it? Let's. He handed the book to her. And let's try to figure out the keyword for the code in that painting. Whew, that was a good chapter. Our next chapter is 17, preparations for a game. And the word ladder is game, gave, give, 5, fine, find. Can't wait to read the next chapter and share that with you guys. Miss everybody. Hope everybody's staying well.